1931, 2025. 94 years. I think it's safe to say that some monsters never go out of style. Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today I'm coming to you all with yet another review, this time for Frankenstein. Co-written and directed by Guillermo del Toro, and starring Oscar Isaac, Jacob Elordi, Mia Goth, and Christoph Waltz. Story-wise, the film is centered around Victor Frankenstein, a gifted young scientist consumed by his determination to conquer death. But when his groundbreaking experiment suddenly gives life to something extraordinary, what begins as a bold pursuit of knowledge quickly turns into a chilling confrontation with the consequences of playing God. So, I'm going to start with the pros, and before fully delving into that, I'm going to provide just a little bit of backstory regarding this character and its place in film history. Now, when it comes to modern audiences, there are some very familiar faces, obvious faces that come to mind. There's Candyman, Ghostface, Annabelle, Valak, and Art the Clown, to name a few. But it was Universal Pictures that first taught audiences the meaning of cinematic fear in 1925. That was the year where, with a single unmasking, Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera gave the silver screen its first cinematic nightmare. However, it was Carl Laemmle Jr.'s directive, the son of the co-founder and then owner of Universal Pictures, that came up with the idea of establishing a new horror lane for the studio. That was officially kicked off in February of 1931 with Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi. And on the heels of that massive success, only 9 months later, Frankenstein, starring Boris Karloff, was released as a follow-up. Considering that the original novel Frankenstein was written in 1818 by Mary Shelley, there have been a lot of variations regarding what the monster looks like, how the story is told, and a lot of deviations from the source material. So, getting into my first pro, I would say what I do appreciate is that there is a fair amount of this that does adhere to the original story. Now, it's been a while since I've read it, but I did do a little bit of a dive, and there were some things that I didn't even remember. It's been some years since I read the novel, but there are quite a few elements of this that are pulling from the source material, which is always great. I don't always expect it, and I know that in adaptation you can get a little bit of any and everything. However, I will say it was really refreshing just seeing a lot of aspects of the story come to life this way. And since this is Guillermo del Toro, what's the best way to enhance any story that's being told but with impeccable cinematography, set design, production design, costume design, practical effects, and the list goes on. This film looks impeccable. If you've seen any of Guillermo del Toro's films, even if you've just seen Pan's Labyrinth, then you know that his attention to detail, his visual flourish, his visual distinction is unparalleled. When you see any of his films, it's just like a feast for the eyes. And this film absolutely does that. And I can absolutely, as always, give Guillermo del Toro his 10s in that regard. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have a very stacked cast here, so many talented people, and I will say that although I do think every performance is memorable, I have to say, I was kind of shocked, but Jacob Elordi absolutely stole the show for me. Now, naturally, he is playing Frankenstein's monster, so I understand that is a character that is going to automatically draw your attention, but I will say that as someone who, of course, was introduced to Jacob Elordi in the HBO series Euphoria, Jacob Elordi obviously has the acting ability, because if you've seen Nate on Euphoria, then my goodness. It's one of those performances that will have you side-eyeing the actor, and I will say for a minute I was just like, I don't know if I want to run into you on a dark night. But that's how effective his performance was. But I have to say, his performance here, yes. He absolutely captured everything that I would have hoped for when it comes to the portrayal and the nuances and just the overall impact of that character. And considering that the film takes the approach of splitting the story in half narratively, meaning that we hear from Victor, but we also hear from the monster as well. I think being able to see him embody that character in such a distinctive way was extremely gratifying and satisfying to watch. With that being said, I also like that Guillermo del Toro's theme regarding the humanizing of monsters and the perspective of humanity versus monsters and what the real cruelty behind humanity versus the supernatural and things that are seemingly non-human. So if you've seen any of his films, then you know that it's a recurring theme there. It's something he easily incorporates here. So it really is like the perfect story for him to adapt. And so much like his previous films, you have that represented here. And of course, it's something I really did appreciate being able to see as far as an extension of his work and his general themes. All right, now I'm going to jump over to the cons. Now, like I said, Guillermo del Toro absolutely has an eye for detail, and he has an array of films that I have absolutely enjoyed. However, to utilize a phrase that some of you, if you've been rocking with me for a minute, you know there's a certain phrase that will pop up with certain films that I am not the biggest fan of. And if you know it, say it with me. Style over what? Substance. Now, that is not to say that the substance is absolutely missing, because I still felt a connection. I still felt some of the emotional impact, mainly regarding Jacob Elordi's performance and the characterization of Frankenstein's monster. However, I think this film gets a little lost in the sauce, and I think because so much attention is being given to these massive sets and these elaborate costumes and these beautiful colors and these effects, all of that, I think that the deeper themes of what the story represents isn't fully fleshed out, nor do I think it's like digging as deep as it could have. Like, there were moments where I was like, okay, I got it, but I feel like every time we had an opportunity to fully make everything click into place on that front, it didn't quite get there. It felt a lot more shallow than I expected it to be. I also think that because the film is incorporating both perspectives, which I don't think is a bad idea, but I think the way that they did it here, it just made it feel a lot more bloated, and I think the runtime does not help. This is like, 2 hours and 30 minutes, 30-ish minutes, and I kind of felt the runtime. Given what we see and how everything plays out, this could have easily been trimmed down 15 to 20 minutes, if not more.
I'm bored! I'm so bored!
My last con concerns the monster in general. As far as physicality, the look of the monster wasn't really feeling it. Like, I didn't hate it, but to me, there's something a little too clean about it, and there's something a little too refined about it. The whole point is that Frankenstein's monster is literally a being that is forged from death. Life being forged from death, where you are literally stitching organs and skin and everything together. And so the disturbing nature of that is evident when you look at Frankenstein. I wish it had gone a little bit deeper in that direction and also kind of leaning into the horror aspect of it. But as far as the appearance, I'm not gonna lie, it was definitely giving me the engineers from Prometheus, which I guess, I mean, it's the modern Prometheus, so I guess, you know, it kind of ties in. But I'm like, when I think of the engineers, I think of Prometheus in relation to Alien, not, you know, in this way. So it's kind of like, I wish we could have gone for something a little less Hollywood-esque. And I don't know if that was the intention, but it kind of felt like, given his visual aesthetic, Guillermo del Toro's visual aesthetic, it felt like one of those situations where, like, The Beast and Beauty and the Beast remake, and with the 2004 adaptation of the Phantom of the Opera, it's just like, we don't want to make it too ugly. We don't want to go all the way there when going all the way there is the point. So I will be honest, I wasn't really feeling that either. I will also say that although we know who the real monster is regarding the story, only monsters play God, right? That's the tagline. I think narratively we course correct a little bit, because let's just say Frankenstein's monster doesn't do all the things that he does in the story. Frankenstein's monster, much like Frankenstein himself, is a very morally gray character. So for me, skirting over certain things that the monster does in the original novel to almost make him a more sympathetic character, or to make the audience identify with him more, to me is kind of a problem. It just, to me, it almost feels like Disneyfying things or whitewashing things. It's just like, look, sometimes moral ambiguity is there, and it's up to the audience to make their own mind up about what that is and what that really means. So for me, I just think that narratively, that muddies the waters, quite literally and figuratively, by doing that. And I also think that takes away some of the darker aspects, once again, of what the original story is representing and showcasing. So I'm going to give Frankenstein a C+. I think this is a solid adaptation, and you can absolutely see the love and appreciation that Guillermo del Toro has for this story. And I do see the love here, but I think sometimes when you love something too much, sometimes it's hard to step back and have a more critical, analytical eye regarding what should stay, what should go, and what changes matter the most regarding bringing a story like this to life. And I think because Guillermo del Toro already has so much spectacle and visual flourish in his work, I think this is another example of a film that is promising and does deliver in some ways, but so much of it is getting lost in the visual sauce, so to speak. Frankenstein will have a limited theatrical release on October 17th and a global streaming release on Netflix on November 7th. You guys are free to check it out, leave your thoughts below, and let me know what you think. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you with the movies.